I asked you to, like, picture Sherlock Holmes right now. Just, close your eyes and picture him. I bet I know exactly what image just popped into your head.
Right. It's probably the guy in the deerstalker hat, the
Yeah,
pipe.
exactly. The human calculating machine. Just this guy who is completely devoid of emotion, looking at, I don't know, like a microscopic speck of mud on your shoe.
Yeah, and instantly deducing like your entire life story from it.
Right. Your darkest secrets, what you had for breakfast, all of it.
He's the ultimate infallible logic engine.
Yeah.
Like a man who views the entire chaotic world as just, well, as a math equation that's just waiting to be solved.
Exactly. But what if I told you that the final greatest mystery Sherlock Holmes ever faced had no body, like no weapon, no crime scene at all?
Kind of wild shift to think about.
It really is.
Yeah.
What if I told you that at the very end of his life, this legendary enforcer of logic, he actually confessed that his unmatched brain was a prison,
Yeah, a literal prison.
and that he looked back at all those brilliant victories, the ones we all know and love, and sincerely wished he had been a criminal instead?
I mean, it is an incredibly jarring contradiction.
It's massive.
When you take that magnifying glass out of his hand and force him to turn it inward onto his own psychology, the landscape of his mind is almost unrecognizable.
Totally unrecognizable. And that vulnerable, completely flipped landscape is exactly where we are heading today. So welcome to another deep dive. We are so glad you're here with us.
Absolutely.
Today, our mission is to explore this really mesmerizing collection of literary reflections by the author Bahaa Awaad.
Yeah, specifically, we're unpacking two deeply interconnected works here. The Hidden Papers of Sherlock Holmes and The Last Confessions of Sherlock Holmes.
And we really need to set the parameters for you right up front,
Yeah.
because these are, well, they're literal and metaphorical papers and confessions.
Right. There is no hound on the moor here. There's no stolen jewel, no elaborate trap set by Professor Moriarty. We are looking at philosophical reflections from a man at the absolute twilight of his life.
Just a man grappling with mortality.
Exactly. Mortality, profound regret, his shifting vices, and, his enduring, really complicated bonds with London and Dr. Watson.
So, okay, let's unpack this. To really get the vibe of this deep dive, you have to adjust your mental setting a bit.
Definitely.
We aren't rushing through the foggy streets of Victorian London in a hansom cab today. I want you to picture sitting in a dimly lit, smoky pub.
Just tucked away in some quiet, forgotten corner of the city.
Yeah, exactly. And you're sitting across from a very old, very tired man who has finally, after a literal lifetime of clinical observation, decided to just tell the raw truth about himself.
That is the perfect atmosphere to hold in your mind. It's quiet, it's reflective, and frankly, it's just deeply melancholic.
It really is. But to understand how he even ended up in this dark pub spilling his soul, we first have to figure out how he survived long enough to get old.
Right, because the math of his life just doesn't add up.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You can't spend decades exposing the most dangerous, violent criminals in Europe and expect to just, retire to a quiet farm.
No, everyone, from his closest friends to his worst enemies, they all fully expected him to die a violent early death.
And many of them actively plotted for it.
Oh, constantly. And yet, the years and the minutes just piled up. He survived.
He did.
And in the very first hidden paper, which Awaad beautifully titles Holmes of the Moment, Holmes actually freely donates the solution to the mystery of his own survival to us.
He just gives it away.
He gives it away for free.
And I love this because it's not some secret martial art, right? And it's not that he was just physically tougher than everyone else in the room.
No, not at all.
He says his secret was that with every single step he took throughout his dangerous life, he, quote, inhabited the moment before the place.
Inhabited the moment before the place. We really need to unpack the mechanics of what that actually means.
Yeah, let's break that down.
Because it is the foundational architecture of his genius. Think about it. A place is physical reality. It's a room, it's a locked door, or, a dark alleyway where a killer is waiting.
It's static.
Exactly. It is static. But the moment, that is temporal. It's fluid time.
So, mechanically speaking, how does a person inhabit time instead of space?
By entirely detaching from the physical present. Like when Holmes says he lived in the moment before the place, he is talking about a state of extreme, almost Zen-like hyper-anticipation.
Okay, wow.
While an ordinary detective walks into a room and reacts to the physical danger, the place Holmes has already mentally run through 1,000 variables in the fraction of a second before his foot even crossed the threshold.
So he wasn't rushing into the physical trap.
Right, he was dwelling in the psychological space right before action was required.
He mastered time, not space.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, it reminds me of watching a professional race car driver.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right, like when they are taking a hairpin turn at 200 miles an hour, they aren't looking at the road directly in front of their tires.
They'd crash if they did that.
Exactly. They're looking hundreds of yards ahead at where they're going to be. They are living in the temporal future of the track, not the physical present of the car.
And Holmes did that with reality itself. It gave him the microsecond he needed to outthink the bullet.
That is wild to think about, just constantly living 1 second ahead of the world.
It is. But that survival mechanism, that temporal detachment, it came at a devastating psychological cost.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And this is where we see the great detective's relationship with his own mind completely invert in his old age. Because in the second part of his confessions, he looks back at this hyper-analytical survival tactic and he laments it.
He hates it now.
He says that for his entire life, his soul was imprisoned in what he calls the forest of the mind.
The forest of the mind. That's such a heavy phrase.
It really is. He realizes he was entirely obsessed with causes, with effects, with facts. He says he built these massive fortresses of sight and hearing.
Right, his famous observation skills.
Yeah, he trained his eyes to see the invisible and his ears to hear the unspoken. But in building these impenetrable fortresses of logic, he completely neglected the most vital sense of all.
Which is?
Hutch.
Okay, wait. I have to push back here a little bit on behalf of everyone listening who loves the classic Sherlock Holmes.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Because his legendary status, like his entire cultural footprint, is built on those fortresses of sight and hearing. That hypervigilance is his entire identity.
True.
Calling it a prison or acting like it was a mistake,
Yeah.
frankly, it sounds a little ungrateful.
Ungrateful.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a lottery winner complaining about having to pay taxes on the millions they just won.
Mm-hmm.
He used those exact skills to save lives and become immortal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a master chef wishing they had never tasted food so they could just, I don't know, enjoy the texture of the plate.
I hear what you're saying, I really do, but I think that completely misreads the psychological toll of what he was actually doing.
Okay, unpack that for me.
What's fascinating here is that it's not about being ungrateful, he's just exhausted. Think about what hypervigilance actually is mechanically.
It's constantly being on alert.
Right, but psychologically, it is a trauma response. It is an inability to ever feel safe.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of it like that.
Imagine a life where you literally cannot turn off the analytical engine. You don't just see a beautiful person laughing. You automatically deduce they are faking the laugh because of, like, a micro tension in their jaw.
You can't just enjoy the moment.
Exactly. You don't just enjoy a walk through London. You are involuntarily cataloging the moisture content of the soil on the pavement.
So you're saying he was trapped, like the machine couldn't be powered down.
Precisely. If we want a better metaphor than the lottery winner, think of a brilliant scientist who decides to look at a breathtaking masterpiece like a Rembrandt painting entirely through a powerful microscope.
Okay, I'm tracking with you.
Through the lens, the scientist understands the exact chemical composition of the oil paints. They can see the microscopic dust trapped in the pigment. They understand the fraying of the canvas threads better than anyone on Earth.
But they can't see the painting?
Exactly. Because they never pulled their eye away from the microscope, they completely missed the portrait. They never saw the emotional beauty of the painting. Holmes spent his entire life as the microscope.
Wow, okay, that frames it perfectly. He had perfect resolution on the details, but zero perspective on the meaning.
And sitting in this pub in his old age, he finally realizes that facts are just not enough. He explicitly states that life itself is the ultimate truth.
And simply touching it, just interacting with it without analyzing it, is the greatest challenge.
And he takes this realization to a deeply moving extreme. He confesses that if he could restart his journey, he wouldn't refine his logic.
What would he do?
He would close his eyes, he would close his ears, and he would focus entirely on the celebration of touch.
Just feeling the world instead of solving it?
Exactly. He wants to trade his deductions for physical, unmediated reality.
Just pause and think about your own life for a second.
Hmm.
How often are you sitting in a meeting or even like at dinner with your family,
Mhm.
entirely trapped in your own forest of the mind?
All the time. We all do it.
Right.
Yeah.
You're analyzing the subtext of your partner's tone or calculating your endless to-do list instead of just feeling the chair you're sitting in and actually being in the room.
Holmes is warning us from the end of his life about what happens when you do that forever.
And to really drive this home, he specifically lists 3 things he wishes he had just touched.
Yeah, this part is beautiful.
He says, quote, every rose, every wall, and every wound.
Every rose, every wall, and every wound. Bahaa Awaad is using incredibly loaded phenomenology here. These aren't just random objects.
No, they feel very intentional.
They represent the holistic spectrum of the human experience that Holmes completely missed.
Let's break those down. The rose. What does that represent to him?
The rose represents beauty without utility. Think about it. A rose doesn't solve a case.
Right. It's useless to a detective.
It has no practical application in the cold, logical world. It exists simply to be beautiful, to be delicate, to be smelled and touched. Holmes spent his life looking for clues, totally ignoring the things that existed just for the sake of existing.
He missed the beauty.
Yeah.
Then there's the wall.
Yes. The wall represents brute reality, barriers. In his career, Holmes always found a way around the wall.
A secret door. A hidden motive.
Exactly, a clever deduction. He thought his way out of every corner. But life has walls you cannot think your way around. Grief, aging, loss.
You just have to hit them.
Sometimes you just have to press your bare hands against the cold stone of the wall and feel your own limitations. He never allowed himself to feel limited.
Which leads directly to the heaviest one of all. The wound.
The wound, yes.
He wishes he had touched every wound. I mean, throughout his career, he looked at trauma, at physical and emotional wounds, purely as data points.
A stab wound just tells him the height of the killer.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And an emotional wound just tells him the motive of the suspect. But he never let himself feel the intimacy of pain.
He observed suffering constantly, but he never actually shared in it. And this absolute inability to exist in the unmediated emotional reality, that's the exact blind spot that leads to his most shocking confession.
Right, because if he failed to touch the world still found a way to touch him.
It always does.
And it did so through the one adversary his intellect just completely failed to categorize.
Which completely shatters the myth of his invincibility.
Because right at the beginning of his first confession, Holmes drops a massive bombshell. He bluntly states, quote, I defeated all my enemies.
Yeah.
Except the women.
Except the women. It is a profound, profound admission of failure.
And usually when we talk about Holmes and women, there's exactly one name that gets brought up, right? Irene Adler.
The woman.
Yeah. The one clever opera singer who managed to outsmart him that one time in a battle of wits. But Awad's text is pointing at something much deeper, isn't it? It's more systemic than just losing a chess match to Irene Adler.
Oh, much deeper. To understand the scale of this defeat, we have to look at the first hidden paper, where Holmes is describing staring at his iconic pipe.
You literally cannot picture Holmes without the pipe.
Yeah.
It's like an extension of his body.
Exactly. But here, he says that over the years, this pipe has accumulated the residue of everything.
Not just tobacco.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just the physical ash of tobacco or the chemical residue of the drugs he used to stimulate his mind. He says the pipe holds the lingering imaginations and the ghosts of 4 women.
4 women. Not just one clever rival. And he doesn't call them memories either. He calls them ghosts.
They are haunting him, mingling with the smoke he breathes in.
And his confession regarding these 4 ghosts is staggering. He says they didn't just break his heart. He explicitly states that they defeated his brilliance as a detective and they defeated any mastery he possessed in anything.
That is just, it's a monumental collapse of ego.
Truly. The man who outsmarted the greatest criminal syndicates in Europe admits total, unmitigated defeat at the hands of these 4 women. But the text doesn't actually name them, right? Like, we have no idea who they actually were.
We don't, and that anonymity is crucial. By leaving them unnamed, they cease to be specific historical characters in his life, and they become entirely symbolic.
Symbolic of what?
They represent everything his logical fortress was designed to keep out. Passion, intuition, chaotic emotion.
They're variables that just won't hold still for his math equation.
Exactly. Logic requires fixed data points, but human emotion is a moving target. And we get a haunting look into this in the 4th hidden paper, which is ironically titled The Final Case.
But it isn't a murder mystery.
No, there is no dead body here. The final case is described as the fingerprints of passing souls.
The fingerprints of passing souls. Wow, that is gorgeous imagery.
And he specifically outlines two types of emotional energy that left these fingerprints on his life. He talks about girls who loved him but without enough enthusiasm, and then he contrasts that with girls who cursed him with all the human energy possible.
The operative word there is energy. Like intense, raw, uncalculated human energy.
Which he couldn't handle.
Right, because Holmes operated in this sterile vacuum of cold deduction. But these women brought weather into his vacuum.
Weather is a great way to put it.
Whether it is the slow, fading chill of a lukewarm love or the blazing, furious heat of a passionate curse. It was energy he just couldn't deflect.
He was defenseless against it.
Let me try a different analogy here, because I think it really helps visualize the breakdown of his mind. Imagine trying to translate a chaotic, screaming, weeping, deeply emotional symphony into a strict mathematical spreadsheet.
Oh, that's impossible.
Right, you can measure the decibels. You can catalog the frequencies of the cello. But the spreadsheet doesn't just fail to capture the sorrow of the music, it is fundamentally the wrong tool for the job.
It's missing the point entirely.
Holmes realizes that the fiery intensity of being passionately cursed or the quiet ache of fading love was a symphony. And his magnifying glass was a spreadsheet. He couldn't deduce a curse, he couldn't calculate heartbreak.
And that realization that his primary tool was entirely useless against the human condition is why he considers it a total defeat.
It makes perfect sense when you frame it like that.
But what is truly fascinating is how he reacts to this defeat now, as an old man in the twilight of his life.
Right, because as he's sitting in this pub, just agonizing and weeping over these four ghosts, like, is he bitter?
No, and that is the profound shift we see in the paper titled Cognac. Awaad sets up this brilliant contrast between the frantic energy of Holmes's youth and the settling of his old age.
And the youth sounds exhausting, honestly.
It was exhausting. In his youth, he and Watson would write these reckless, blood-pumping letters to each other. They would feverishly document the, quote, discoveries of a woman's body.
Oh boy.
Holmes actually describes it as trying to unlock the safe of the body.
I really want to pause on that phrase, the safe of the body. Even in intimacy, young Holmes couldn't stop being a detective.
Exactly.
A woman wasn't a partner. She was a safe to be cracked, a puzzle to be unlocked so he could feel smart. It was all about conquest and proving his own brilliance.
He was entirely performative.
Yeah.
But now the narrative notes that they have passed the midpoint of life. The journey has crossed to the other side of the mountain. And Holmes finds an immense, almost overwhelming satisfaction in simply letting go.
Letting go of the performance.
Letting go of the need for any validation. He states that he now feels a complete disdain and absolute disregard for seeking any admiration from any woman.
Disdain and disregard. That sounds harsh at first glance. It almost sounds like a defense mechanism. Like he's just saying, I don't care anyway.
It does sound like that, but when you look closely at the text, it's not born of bitterness or misogyny. No, it is born of a deep, relieving peace. The body has paid its bills, he says. It has known every adventure. The battle is over.
He's just done fighting.
He has surrendered to the fact that he was defeated by these emotional forces, and in that complete surrender, he finally finds rest. He doesn't have to be the smartest person in the room anymore. He doesn't have to perform his genius to earn love.
He fought the war of logic against emotion. He lost spectacularly, and now he is just profoundly grateful that the war is over so he can sit down.
It's the peace of the vanquished.
That is beautiful. And this letting go, this total release of the need to prove himself, it completely reshapes how he views the other great obsession of his life, too.
The obsession that defined his entire public myth, his mortal enemies.
Because if you thought his shift on romantic validation was dramatic, his perspective on his greatest villains is completely paradigm shifting.
It changes everything.
It really does. It brings us to a part of these reflections that focuses on the futility of rivalry and what he views as his ultimate crime.
Awaad paints an incredibly vivid cinematic scene for us here. Imagine Holmes awake at dawn.
Okay, picture it.
The sky is just starting to lighten. He hasn't slept a wink all night. He's sitting alone, lighting his pipe, watching the new day break.
It's the ultimate noir setup. You instinctively picture him hovering over a map of London, trying to, I don't know, crack a coded message from a serial killer.
But the reality is the exact opposite. He's not thinking about crime at all. He's having a profound existential crisis about the very nature of enmity.
He's questioning the bad guys.
He is thinking back to the absolute peak of his rivalries, the height of the plotting, the counterplotting, the deadly high-stakes games of cat and mouse.
The Moriarty days, the life-or-death struggles at the edge of the Reichenbach Fault.
Yes. And sitting there in the quiet dawn, Holmes asks himself a question that completely deconstructs his own mythology.
What does he ask it?
He asks, why, during all of those years of bitter, violent rivalry, did he never just invite one of those enemies to his suburban London pub for a drink?
A pint with Moriarty. I mean, it sounds completely absurd on its face. Hey, Professor, put down the death ray. Let's grab a stout out in the suburbs. But when you actually think about it, it's kind of brilliant.
It is brilliant. He sincerely wonders what would have happened if they had just shared a glass. And then a second glass and a third.
Just got a little tipsy together.
What if the masks had slipped? What if they had just sat there and asked about each other's families?
He even imagines them sharing stories of the first girls who unlocked the safe of the body for them. There's that phrase again. He is imagining treating his mortal, sworn enemy as just another flawed, tired human man sitting at a bar.
He is recognizing the shared humanity in his adversary. And to illustrate this shift, Awaad includes a profound quote that Holmes once posed to a childhood friend.
Let's hear it.
Holmes asks, what is the use of the cake if we do not enjoy its cream to the last breath?
What is the use of the cake if we do not enjoy its cream to the last breath? I love that. But I have to imagine his friend thought he was losing his mind.
Oh, he absolutely did. The text actually notes that his friend looked at him as if he were a war-crazed soldier looking at Napoleon.
Right. Because to his friend, they're locked in a literal mortal war against darkness and crime. And Sherlock Holmes is suddenly philosophizing about the cream on a pastry.
It seems like madness.
But to Holmes, looking backward from old age, it is the only thing that makes any sense.
Because he realizes that the war was largely an illusion. If we connect this to the bigger picture, why do we need enemies?
To give us a purpose.
We need them to define ourselves. Without Moriarty's absolute chaos, who is Holmes, he's just a bored genius with a drug habit. He needed the rivalry to give his intellect a purpose.
Wow. But as he nears the end of his journey, he realizes the purpose was hollow.
Entirely hollow.
He says that all tastes and all colors eventually become equal. The adrenaline rush of victory and the crushing agony of defeat. When you get old enough, they both just taste like the past.
And it all fades to gray.
And in that grayness, Holmes realizes that true enmity is exhausting. More than that, it is performative. He asks himself, quite seriously, who actually qualifies for the honor of his hatred?
Who is truly worthy of the great Sherlock Holmes's eternal hatred?
Right. And the answer he arrives at is nobody.
Nobody at all.
No human being deserves that much of his spiritual energy. The rivalry was a grand theatrical game they played to distract themselves, and by playing it so seriously, they missed out on the simple human connection they could have shared over a pint.
And this realization that the great game of cops and robbers was essentially a waste of his humanity leads him to what he calls the true crime.
This part is so heavy.
In his third confession, we read a heartbreaking letter that he writes to Watson.
It is arguably the most devastating passage in the collection. He tells Watson that their lives were besieged by facts. They were defeated by evidence.
Besieged by facts.
They let the Sacks win. They built the walls of their reality so tight that nothing magical could get in.
Exactly. And when you reduce the entire world to empirical evidence, to just causes and effects, you systematically murder the impossible.
You kill the wonder.
And without the impossible to chase, without a sense of wonder, all that remains at the bottom of the glass are rules, laws, and boredom.
Boredom. The ultimate terrifying enemy of Sherlock Holmes. If you go back to Arthur Conan Doyle's original stories, Holmes literally shoots a pistol into the wall of his apartment out of sheer manic boredom when he doesn't have a case.
Right, to stimulate his brain.
But here in Awaad's text, the boredom isn't caused by a lack of cases. The boredom is the realization that the cases themselves, the endless enforcement of societal rules, are fundamentally boring.
He declares to Watson that the true crime of their lives, the only one deserving punishment, was surrendering to this boredom.
Wow.
It was accepting a world governed exclusively by laws and evidence and losing their connection to the unknown.
And this leads to the ultimate twist of the entire narrative. This is the moment in the source material that genuinely made me stop reading and just stare blankly at the wall for a full minute to process it.
The desire to trade places.
Yes. Holmes says that if he had the chance, knowing everything he knows now about the crushing, sterile boredom of a rule-bound life. He wouldn't hesitate for a single second to trade places with the very criminals he spent his entire life catching.
It is a staggering reversal.
It's insane. The ultimate enforcer of the law deeply envies the lawbreakers.
He says he would gladly sit in a narrow, dark prison cell at the bottom of a cold dungeon if it meant he got to touch the brilliance of the impossible one last time.
Think about the tragedy of that. He spent his entire life keeping society safe, enforcing the boundaries of what is allowed. But secretly, at the end of it all, he realizes he was enforcing a world he didn't actually want to live in.
He was a guard at his own prison.
He envies the people who dared to break the rules, because at least they reached for something beyond the mundane. At least they felt the fire, even if it burned them.
They touched the impossible, even if it destroyed them. And Holmes, who remained perfectly safe inside his fortress of logic, realizes that safety was just another word for not truly living.
So let's take stock of where this leads our protagonist.
It's a dark place.
His intellect, his defining trait, feels like a suffocating trap. His legendary victories over his enemies feel totally hollow and performative. His romantic life is a series of total defeats by unnamed ghosts. So what anchors this man?
That is the big question.
As his whole identity dissolves into the smoke of that pub, what is he holding on to keep from just vanishing entirely?
This brings us to the twilight of his life, where he doesn't just dissolve into despair, thankfully. He leans very heavily on 4 distinct totems, 4 anchors that carry him through his final years.
And the first one is obvious, but the way it's portrayed here is so deeply moving. It's Dr. Watson.
Yes, John Watson. Holmes explicitly names him in these papers as his only true friend.
Which we all knew, but it hits different here.
It does. And what is so poignant is observing how the mechanics of their friendship have evolved. We talked earlier about those frantic, blood-pumping letters they wrote in their youth, racing to describe their conquests.
When they were trying to outrun time.
Precisely. Now, the dynamic has completely inverted. They have traded the frenetic, anxious energy of their youth for quiet, unspoken companionship.
Just being together.
And this shift is perfectly, brilliantly symbolized by their vice of choice.
Right, because classic Sherlock Holmes was famously addicted to a very specific, very fast vice.
Cocaine.
Yes.
In the texts, Holmes reflects on their younger days in London and actually describes cocaine as the privilege of the smart.
The privilege of the smart.
Yes. Think about the mechanics of cocaine. It is a chemical accelerator. It was fuel for a mind that was already racing.
He needed it to keep up with himself.
It was how he forced his brain to maintain top speed when reality was moving too slowly to stimulate him. Cocaine is essentially saying to time, give me the future, right now, as fast as possible.
But now, in the twilight, the cocaine is gone. And what has replaced it?
Cognac.
Cognac. It's such a deliberate shift.
It is entirely deliberate. Holmes describes a glass of cognac as the greatest pleasure of all.
Wow.
Contrast the temporal mechanics of cocaine with cognac. Cocaine is a sharp, immediate chemical rush. Cognac requires extreme patience.
It takes years to make.
Exactly. It requires sitting in a dark oak barrel for years, slowly absorbing the flavor of the wood and the passage of time. And to drink it, you can't rush.
You sip it.
You have to sit in a dark corner of a bar, hold the heavy glass, and sip it slowly, letting the warmth spread. Cocaine is running from time. Cognac is sitting with time.
He's no longer trying to outrun his own life. He and Watson are just sitting together in the dark, sipping this aged spirit, satisfied that the body has paid all its debts and they don't have to run anymore.
It's a beautiful image of aging.
And while he's sitting there sipping that cognac, he leans on his third anchor, his pipe.
The pipe that is full of ghosts.
I cannot get over that imagery. The pipe acts as this physical vessel. It holds the literal chemical residue of the tobacco and drugs from his past, but it also holds the figurative residue of his entire life.
The women who defeated him.
The enemies he should have had a pint with. The unsolved emotional mysteries. He sits in the bar, drawing deeply from the smoke of his pipe, literally breathing in his own past while waiting for the end.
The smoke is the physical manifestation of his memory. It curls around him in the dark, blurring the sharp edges of his logical world.
It softens the facts.
But there is one final anchor, and it might actually be the most powerful gravitational force in his twilight years, even more than Watson or the cognac or the ghosts in the pipe.
London.
London, the city itself.
In these papers, London is not just a setting. It's not just the geographical backdrop where the crimes happen to take place. London is portrayed as a siren.
A siren, yeah.
It is a living, breathing, mythological entity that steals the heart and consumes the mind.
He reflects on how he and Watson squandered their youth for free in its streets. He says they desired nothing more than to melt entirely into its sweeping sea of humans.
I really want to pull on that thread, the sweeping sea of humans, because it contrasts so sharply with the myth.
How so?
Well, we always picture Holmes standing above the crowd, the isolated, superior genius looking down at the petty squabbles of ordinary people from his window on Baker Street.
Oh, right, the observer on the balcony.
Exactly. But Awaad reveals that on some deep spiritual level, Holmes desperately wanted to melt into the crowd. He wanted to be a part of the city's collective heartbeat, its successes, its ordinary failures, and its varied endings of love stories.
He wanted to be a participant, not just an observer.
Yes.
And even as he ages, even as his physical strength abandons him and his logical fortress crumbles, the magnetic pull of London never weakens. There is this chilling, beautiful visual ascribed in the final case paper.
Tell us about it.
It's just a scrap of paper.
A single scrap of paper found among his things, and written on it is a single word, repeated endlessly. London, London, London.
Over and over again, it reads like a heartbeat or a desperate incantation.
It gives me goosebumps.
Even when his body's breaking down, the spiritual call of the city never lessens by a single degree. His soul still dreams of returning one last time to the foggy streets.
But, and this is the crucial, beautiful contradiction of the entire narrative, when he envisions this final return to London, what does he actually want to do there?
It's not what you'd expect.
Not at all. He doesn't want to go back to Baker Street and polish his medals. He doesn't want the police to throw a parade for his brilliant victories. He doesn't want to sit by the fire and review all the cases he perfectly solved.
No, he wants to celebrate the unsolved puzzles.
He wants to celebrate the open endings. He wants to return the brilliance and the glory to the question marks. He explicitly states that he wants to revel in the pure, unadulterated joy of simply wondering.
And this raises the ultimate philosophical question of the deep dive, really. What is the goal of a human life?
A huge question.
For his entire career, Holmes's singular goal was to turn question marks into periods, to close the case, to assert dominance by having the final answer.
But now, sitting in the twilight, he realizes that having all the answers is a sterile, dead existence.
It's boring.
If you know exactly how every single magic trick is done, there is no more magic in the world. The joy, he discovers far too late, is in the mystery itself. The joy is in the not knowing.
And most poignantly of all, he says that upon finally reaching London, upon returning to this grand city of endless, unsolved human mysteries, his heart will finally celebrate one final thing.
Fatigue.
Yes, his heart will celebrate fatigue.
Not a victory.
Not a final victory over evil, not intellectual dominance over his peers, just the quiet, peaceful, heavy exhaustion of a long life that has finally been lived.
The profound relief of finally being allowed to be tired. You know, you read that final confession and you just want to reach back through the pages, put a hand on this brilliant, tortured detective's shoulder and tell him, it's okay, you can rest now, you don't have to solve it anymore.
It is a radically transformed image of a cultural icon. Bahaa Awaad has taken the ultimate literary symbol of cold, calculating logic and systematically dismantled him until all that is left is the ultimate symbol of human vulnerability.
And that brings us to the end of our journey today. Let's speak directly to you, our listener, as we wrap this up, because we've covered massive philosophical ground today.
We really have.
We took the magnifying glass out of Sherlock Holmes's hand and we turned it directly onto his soul.
We found a man who realized that his relentless pursuit of logic, his obsession with facts, and his need for constant intellectual victory built a forest of the mind.
A prison.
A dense, suffocating fortress that kept him from truly touching the world.
We saw a man who conquered the criminal underworld, but freely and peacefully admits he lost to the intense, unquantifiable, chaotic energy of women.
We saw a man who realized that hating his enemies was essentially a waste of a good drink.
Right.
And who secretly envied the criminals he caught because, at the very least, they dared to touch the impossible while he hid behind the rules.
And finally, we found him finding his greatest peace, not in a perfectly solved case, but in a quiet glass of cognac with his only friend, breathing in the ghosts of his past, waiting for the embrace of London, and yearning to finally celebrate the unsolved mysteries.
It's a profound, lasting reminder that your life isn't a puzzle waiting to be solved. It is a reality waiting to be touched.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on today. We started this deep dive talking about Holmes as a human calculating machine. And, we all have moments where we want to be that machine.
It feels safer.
We want the clean, binary answer to our messy lives. Holmes spent his entire life being that machine for society. But if the greatest deductive mind in literary history reached the absolute end of his journey and wished he had spent less time analyzing the world and more time simply closing his eyes and feeling it, it makes you wonder.
What are we doing?
Exactly. What logical fortress have you built to keep yourself safe? What superpower or obsession are you relying on right now that might actually be keeping you from experiencing your own life? Are you sitting at the table enjoying the cream of your cake? Or are you just endlessly analyzing the recipe?
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just put the magnifying glass down.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. It's been an absolute privilege to unpack this with you. Until next time, keep wondering, keep questioning, and maybe leave a few mysteries unsolved.